Last night, I saw the Superman movie, and I'm going to review it because I'm a grown-up and I can do what I want, and it's my YouTube channel. There are three things you need to know about me in regards to this whole Superman thing. One is that I grew up reading those comics from I'd say the late 80s, about 87, probably more like 88, all the way up through about the pandemic. I've like been a longtime Superman reader, Triangle era, Millennium era. I've read it all, and it's just kind of been this like backbone of my reading from like my childhood to the adolescent years and into my adult years, and good and bad. I've seen it all. Also, I would add that I was a pretty like solid fan of the Zack Snyder take on the character. I thought, respectively, like Man of Steel was refreshing, if a bit drab. Batman vs. Superman was, I think, an ambitious film, but really hobbled and probably the worst of the three movies he made. And his actual cut of Justice League is, I think, an overall triumph of artistic intent. But I also get why it didn't take on with audiences, like why it was rejected in sort of the wake of the Marvel Cinematic Universe's success, and why Warner Brothers wanted to go a different direction, and why they would pick off someone like James Gunn, who was probably the most individualized voice of the entire Marvel roster with his Guardians films. And yeah, so that's why we've got a James Gunn Superman. And I've got to tell you guys, it's good. It's really good. It's really good. I think it might be the best Superman movie we've ever gotten. I think in terms of like pure spectacle and pure translation of the source material onto the screen, it's the first time we've ever gotten like Superman as he appears on the page on the screen, and his world and his supporting cast and the like. I'll try to like dive in a little deeper into that, but let's just talk about the plot really quickly. The setup for this is it takes place 3 years into Superman's career. There's actually kind of a clever prologue text thing that's a bit Star Warsy, but I think done in a really cute way. This is like Superman 3 years into his career. He's already got an established antagonism with Lex Luthor. His relationship with Lois is already going strong. He's a part of the Daily Planet staff. He's firmly ensconced in Metropolis. He's a well-known hero. And there's other heroes too. If you've seen the trailers, you'll know that there is a little group, a little trio of heroes made up of Green Lantern, Hawkgirl, and Mr. Terrific, called the Justice Gang, sort of a proto-Justice League. And they're working alongside Superman. You know, they're the other heroes that are kind of existent in this world of like metahumans, which is all part of this new DC universe that Gunn is spawning off. All that preamble out of the way, though, the plot really kicks off in a sort of international conflict as Superman has like been deep into his whole truth, justice, and American way effort. He's decided to go take this into international waters as well. And he gets involved in a conflict between the fictional countries of Boravia, which I guess think like a really generic version of Russia, maybe, and Jarnapur, which you could say Ukraine, but it's really more like Gaza, but with like the serial numbers really filed off. He gets involved in preventing Boravia from invading Jarnapur, and this creates like some form of criticism for Superman publicly, at least like kind of a burbling of it, that then Lex Luthor and his gang of henchmen, which include this CGI goop woman called the Engineer, which I know is a comics character from The Authority, I know, but like this is how she's presented on screen here, and his masked henchman, Ultraman. They utilize this potential disruption in Superman's sterling reputation to kind of dig in between Superman and the public, and eventually the U.S. federal government. But of course, intrepid reporters Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen have Big Blue's back, and I think that's really when the plot kicks off into high gear. There's a lot of discussion and attention being paid to the potential success or lack thereof of this film. I mean, we're in a world now where superhero movies are not making the kind of dough they used to make, right? Is the fad dying? I don't know. But also, this is an attempt to sort of reinvigorate the concept of the DC universe on screen for general audiences. James Gunn's got a lot of pressure on his shoulders, and they've already produced and have them shot this Green Lanterns TV show that's coming out next year with Aaron Pierre and Kyle Chandler. There's a Supergirl movie that's coming out around the same time. There's a lot of animated series that are in production. Like, there's a lot that's going on here that, I mean, if this movie doesn't catch on, I don't really know where they find themselves. So it feels like failure is not an option. But putting aside whether or not Superman will find an audience with the general public, it should, because it's a very good film. It's really the Superman movie that I think a lot of fans of the character have been looking for some time, be it because they were dissatisfied with the previous iteration with Henry Cavill and Zack Snyder, or if they have been dissatisfied going all the way back to the Reeve Donner era and the Bryan Singer, Brandon Routh film, whatever. It is Superman as you've read him in comics by people like Grant Morrison and Louise Simonson and Mark Waid and Dan Jurgens. And this is Superman who is a very hopeful, pure take on the character. It is a Superman who is very concerned with the well-being of the citizens of Metropolis. And it is a Superman that is interested in not just the core character, but also his cast that surrounds him, which is one of the richest in comics. So much time over the last few film versions of this character where they've tried to figure out a way to make Superman work with modern audiences, and I think that's been an error. I mean, this idea of how can we reinvent him for the post 9/11 generation? How can we make kids interested in something as corny as Superman? But what Gunn does here is he just takes the material, pops that shit on screen, and decides that is what makes Superman work. It is not broke, you know. The comic book character, for all his foibles and all his confusing and weird contradictory elements and all this kind of whiz-bang sci-fi, that is the appeal of Superman. People want to see that, and that's what you get. You get Superman with helper robots in the Fortress of Solitude. He's got his super-powered dog Krypto with his little cape. And like that's the trappings you see in the trailer. But in the actual story, beyond that, you know, Lois Lane, played by Rachel Brosnahan, which I think is probably like the best version of Lois we've gotten, actually has something to do for once. Like a major intrinsic part of the plot is a subplot that involves Lois. Jimmy Olsen gets a smaller subplot, but it's also very important. And there's like these cool little aspects to the character that I think are just so rich. Like this idea that Jimmy's like this ladies' man, despite being kind of like, you know, not a traditionally great looking guy, which Scott Gisolato's a very handsome man. Give me a break. But like the idea that like, oh, that's Jimmy's got this whole other weird background world going on, and that comes from the source material, and it's so cleverly done and executed. You have all these little connecting pieces that are just woven into this beautifully rich tapestry that, while I think the film itself might be a little overstuffed, I think that might be fair criticism, there's not a lot that I would change about it, short of a couple things I'll talk about at the end. But like, you know, I feel like if I pull that thread too much, all that's built, that beautiful tower of Jenga, will just fall apart. And I will take the flaws of this movie for sort of the beautiful core that it presents. Look, I know for a fact the big draw of this movie is gonna be the dog. I mean, when we came home from the theater, our whole like attention was paid to our own dog Krypto, which is named after the dog in this movie and in the comics. But like the dog is going to be the thing that brings families in, that people are going to be talking about. My mother's very excited about the dog. You know, it's going to be a thing. But I should add, the other major highlight that I think should get more play here is Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor. I've liked like the other Superman movies to some degree or another. I don't think there's any Superman movie I hate. Like they're all pretty good to really good, or you know, good enough, whatever. There's like a big vacillation there, but I always find something to like about them. Even the one where Superman tries to get rid of all the nuclear weapons and he fights Nuclear Man and stuff. That was one of the first movies I ever saw in the theater. A problem with a lot of these films is that I think their takes on Lex Luthor have always been missing something. Gene Hackman, legendary actor, not a great Lex Luthor. His real estate schemer, kind of, fun in a bumbling way, but that's not the Lex Luthor I know. Jesse Eisenberg's sort of reedy tech bro that kind of falls further and further into the hands of something much darker. Again, pretty interesting, a unique take on the character, but not the version that I've always been looking for. But Nicholas Hoult absolutely nails it. His version of this character, by way of James Gunn, is by far a perfect encapsulation of the motivations that drive Luthor in a way that I haven't seen presented, except maybe in like the animated series and like the Justice League cartoons that Bruce Timm and team did. Luthor, to me, is someone who is driven by this idea that all of the adulation that he feels he is due has been ripped away from him by this alien who he thinks did nothing to earn it. And all of his self-worth is like wrapped up in this idea that Superman is the one thing that's stopping him from being the most beloved man in Metropolis. And now he's going to stop it. He's going to stop at nothing to make sure that this one obstacle that prevents him from potential greatness is out of his way. It's a singular obsession. And when you tie it in with this script that's like equal parts soaring and corny by design, it's this powerhouse performance that I think by the time we get to the later acts especially, we really get a chance to see Hoult show his stuff in a really, really defined manner. There's one little bit that reminded me of Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely's All-Star Superman, and I thought it was really enchanting. What's funny is my partner and I, when we came back from the theater, we were talking a bit about the various performances, her thoughts, my thoughts. I think she was a little cooler on the movie than me, maybe, just to be fair. But they liked it, but with some reservations. One of her biggest complaints was actually David Corenswet, who's playing Superman. She felt like he was kind of he was fine. He's fine, he presents the idealized version of Superman as far as like we know him. Like he's very tall, he's very handsome, he has a great voice, solid enough actor as presented here. But one of the things that she reminded me of was that Nicholas Hoult was also up for the Superman role. And she felt like, man, I wonder what this movie would have been like with Nick Hoult as Superman instead. Would it have like gone even further, like to that next level? Could the movie have been a different film, a potentially better one, with Hoult in the central role and someone else as Lex Luthor? I don't know, let's say Bradley Cooper decided that yes, I will be Lex Luthor. Like that would have been pretty cool, I think. But I also, again, get back to that point. There are so many moving parts in this film that I'm loath to change too much. For fear of the whole thing just not working because suddenly it's all out of balance. And I really, really would be sad to lose that Lex Luthor performance. I think having the best Lex Luthor we've ever had is good enough. As far as Superman goes and Corenswet, again, fine. He's good. He's solid. Very handsome. Uh, the only thing I wish Gunn would have done better with this is present his Clark side a little more. We don't get a lot of that in this film. Just like a few, like a scene with him as Clark, a scene with him in Smallville, which is like sort of like the third aspect of Superman. Like you've got Superman, the alien that the world sees. You've got Clark Kent, the reporter that Metropolis sees. And then you've got the real Clark, who is the son of John and Martha Kent. And we only get so much of that, along with like some good romance stuff for like the romance shippers who want to see a lot of Clois. But I really could have gone for just a little more of that sort of like bumbling, sort of mild-mannered energy that Clark Kent, the character, brings to the screen. And it's the one thing that, like, I think if Corenswet had been given the opportunity to do more of that, I think that would have like elevated his performance more and maybe like given people a slightly better impression of his Superman. That's the thing people talk about with Christopher Reeve, by the way. Like, they love his Superman, but they love the dichotomy between his Superman and his Clark. And since then, we haven't gotten a lot of that. Like, Brandon Routh did a little bit. I feel like Henry Cavill did like none of that. We got a little bit of Clark Kent, but it's basically just him in glasses, it's Superman in glasses, rather than actually like changing the character in some way. And here, there's a little taste, but it's not enough, and I would like to have more. That's a note for future films, Gunn. Nits I could pick. I think in the third act, there are a few too many things going on, particularly like there's a ticking time bomb thing that's gonna threaten the world, and there's this international diplomacy thing that's still simmering in the background, and there's like this huge slugfest, and it's all happening at once. But we could get rid of one of those things, that'd be fine. I think my partner argued that the international piece was Gunn biting off more than he could chew. Probably true, but I'm also tired of sort of the ticking time bombs that like constantly find their way into these superhero movies. And so having them both, I don't know, is it too much, or do they negate one another in that it's just one big morass of things? I don't know. But that's probably like the other big complaint I have. That, and like, again, this gilding of the lily a little bit with like, this is a Superman who saves people. Even saves a squirrel, like it does feel like the corrective comes on a little too strong. But in all, these are like mostly minor complaints for my part, because I mean, this is a Superman that gives us, Lois, Jimmy, Crypto, the Fortress of Solitude robots, you get Guy Gardner, you get Mr. Terrific, who's like probably the best character in the movie outside of Luthor. Like the character find of 2025 is Michael Holt. These are things that I think all sort of add up to this really nice, amazing whole. And it's got great fun action. It's bright. It's poppy. It's just like this cool little sugar rush of a film that I have not felt this way about a superhero movie really since, I don't know, maybe like the second Raimi Spider-Man. I don't think that a Superman movie can ever really replicate the whole, like, you mess with Spidey, you mess with New York kind of thing. But I do think that it's knocking on the door, and that's way better than I think many people had the right to expect. So yeah, overall, Superman, really fun, really good movie. And I don't know, it's the first superhero movie I've liked in a long time, I can't wait to see more, James. Bring it on, man. That in itself is its own little miracle. And yeah, I think you guys should go see it. Please do, because I would like to see more Superman movies like this, for sure. Anyway, that's my Superman review. I'll be back to like a book video next week, and then maybe we'll talk about Fantastic Four. How about that? I'll be seeing that in a couple weeks too. And maybe I'll be just as happy with that, though I'm dubious. We'll see. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, and as always, keep on reading, and in this case, watching movies. See ya. This video is sponsored by me. I have a book out. Do you like short horror stories in the vein of Stephen King? Small town interconnected intrigue a la Ray Bradbury? The narrative weirdness of Gene Wolfe? Then this may be the book for you. Pick up Taking Root by Kyle Pinion today at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and any online book retailer.